Have you ever noticed that this channel talks about some seemingly unrelated things? One week I'm talking about watercolor, and another week it's burnout, or creativity, or identity, or purpose, life transitions. And if you're new here, you might be wondering, what exactly is this channel about? And that's a fair question, because on the surface, it probably looks a little unusual. It's not really an art channel. It's not exactly a coaching channel, and it's definitely not a traditional self-help channel. But underneath all of those topics is really one conversation. A conversation about what happens when the life you've built no longer feels fully aligned with who you are. And that's what I'd like to explore today. Before we dive in, I'd just like to say hello and welcome. I'm Janet, architect, mentor, watercolor artist, and a creative renewal coach. I founded Blueprint to Brushstrokes because I've become increasingly convinced that many thoughtful adults eventually reach a point where they begin to ask deeper questions. Questions about identity, questions about meaning, questions about purpose, creativity, and questions about what they want the next chapter of their lives to become. My hope is that this channel becomes a place where those conversations can happen with curiosity, grace, honesty, and encouragement. Because if you found your way here, there's a good chance that some part of you is searching for something deeper than productivity hacks, achievement, or external success. And if that's true, you're not alone. Over the years, I began to notice a pattern. People would come to me for very different reasons. Some wanted to talk about creativity. Others were struggling with burnout. Some were considering retirement, while others were navigating career changes, leadership transitions, empty nesting, questions about purpose, questions about identity, questions about what comes next. And on the surface, these seem like completely different challenges. But underneath them all was a remarkably similar question. Sometimes that question sounded like, I don't feel like myself anymore. Or something feels missing. Or I thought I'd feel happier once I got here. Is this the life I want to create? What struck me was that these people weren't failing at life. In many cases, they were successful, even excelling by conventional standards. They had careers, families, responsibilities, accomplishments. People depended on them. From the outside, many appeared to be doing very well. And yet, something still felt disconnected for them inside. And that's when I began to realize most people aren't actually looking for better productivity. They're looking for reconnection. Modern culture tends to assume that almost every problem can be solved with a better system. Better productivity, better habits, better scheduling, better optimization, better time management. Get another gadget or an app to help you out. And while those things certainly have their place, I've noticed that they often fail to address the deeper issue. Because many of the people I speak with aren't struggling because they lack systems. They're struggling because they've lost touch with themselves. They've spent years doing what was expected, meeting responsibilities, caring for others, building careers, checking the boxes, achieving the goals, and somewhere along the way, they stopped listening to their own voice. The solution isn't always greater efficiency. Sometimes the solution is reconnection. Reconnection with what matters. Reconnection with our values. Reconnection with our creativity. Reconnection with who we actually are. This is one of the reasons creativity appears so often in these conversations. People sometimes assume creativity is a luxury, something extra, like dessert, something we only get to enjoy after all the important things are checked off our task list. But I've come to believe something very different. Creativity is one of the primary ways we reconnect with ourselves. It helps us explore possibilities before we're ready to act on them. It helps us to notice quieter truths. It helps us to imagine futures we haven't yet given ourselves permission to pursue. It's how we explore, how we listen, how we question, how we discover, how we experiment, and how we navigate through uncertainty. That's true whether you're painting a landscape, designing a building, writing a book, starting a business, planning your retirement, or figuring out who you want to become in the next chapter of your life. Creativity isn't simply about making art. It's a fundamentally human capacity. And I believe it's one of the most important tools we have for helping us to navigate change. This is also why burnout appears on the channel from time to time. Not because burnout is the center of the work, but because it is often the doorway into the work. Many people begin asking deeper questions only after they've reached the point of complete exhaustion, frustration, disappointment, misalignment, or burnout. And maybe not for the first time. Not because burnout creates purpose, but because burnout often forces us to pause long enough to notice what isn't working for us anymore. It asks questions that are uncomfortable and that we've been avoiding. Questions like, why am I living this way? What matters most to me? What needs to change? Burnout is rarely just about working too hard. Very often, it's about living too far away from ourselves for too long. And that's why I believe recovery ultimately involves more than rest. It often involves reconnection and realignment of our inner compass. I also spend a lot of time talking about transitions because some of the most significant moments in our lives happen between chapters. Those in-between seasons when we're no longer who we were, but we're not quite sure who we're becoming. Career changes, retirement, creative rediscovery, empty nesting, leadership transitions, personal loss, health challenges, reinvention. These seasons can feel uncomfortable because they ask us to let go of certainty. But I've come to see them differently. I see them as invitations. Invitations to listen more closely, to question inherited assumptions, to clarify what matters most to us now, and to become more intentional about the life we're creating. Because the most meaningful chapters are rarely built by accident. They're designed through reflection, choice, courage, and small, consistent actions. Perhaps that's why architecture has influenced me so deeply. For decades, I helped people create spaces that didn't yet exist. But before any building was constructed, we would begin with questions. What matters most for this space? What are we trying to create? How do we want people to experience this place? What purpose will it serve? Only once we understood those things could we begin designing. And eventually I realized that those same questions apply to our lives. Every single person is designing something, whether consciously or unconsciously. Every choice, commitment, priority, habit, every act of courage, it's all shaping the life we're living. And that's really where the name Blueprint to Brushstrokes comes from. A blueprint provides direction. A brushstroke represents action. We need both. Vision without action remains a dream. Action without vision creates drift. And a meaningful life requires both. So, what is this channel really about? If I had to summarize it in one sentence, it would be this. Blueprint to Brushstrokes exists to help thoughtful adults reconnect with their authentic voice, meaningful purpose, and creative potential so they can intentionally design a meaningful next chapter. Sometimes we'll explore this through painting, sometimes through sketching, sometimes through burnout recovery, sometimes through stories or coaching, questions, leadership lessons. mentorship, reflection, or life transitions. But underneath every video is the same deeper conversation. How do we become more fully ourselves? How do we reconnect with what matters? How do we live with greater authenticity, purpose, creativity, and meaning? And how do we consciously create a life that feels aligned with those things? I'd like to leave you with a simple question. Not a productivity question, not a goal-setting question, a reflection question. What part of yourself have you lost touch with in the busyness of life? Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's joy. Maybe it's purpose. Maybe it's wonder. Maybe it's possibility. Or maybe it's community and connection. You don't need to solve anything today. You don't need a 5-year plan. Just simply notice what comes up, honor it, and know that sometimes awareness is the first step toward change. Imagine what could change if you stopped measuring your life solely by your external achievements. Imagine reconnecting with parts of yourself that have been quietly waiting beneath the surface. Imagine approaching your next chapter not as something of uncertainty or to fear, but something to intentionally design. Imagine bringing more creativity, more meaning, more authenticity, more alignment into your everyday life. That's the possibility this channel explores. Not perfect lives, not optimized lives, meaningful lives. If this conversations resonate with you, I'd love to invite you to stay connected. You can subscribe here on YouTube, join my newsletter, explore the companion blog posts, or download some of the reflection resources linked in the description. And if you'd like more personalized support, I also offer one-on-one creative reset conversations. They're designed to help you reconnect with creativity, clarify what matters most, and identify a meaningful next step. If that feels aligned, I'd be honored to support you. So, if you've ever wondered why this channel talks about art one week and life transitions the next, now you know. They're all part of the same conversation, because this channel was never really about painting. Painting is one doorway. Creativity is one pathway. But the deeper work is helping us reconnect with ourselves so we can create lives that feel authentic, meaningful, and aligned with what matters most to ourselves. Because a meaningful next chapter isn't something you just find. It's something you design. One thoughtful blueprint, one courageous brushstroke, and one grace-filled day at a time. Until next time, wishing you a gentle, creative, grace-filled day, and I'll see you in the next video.